We are back in studio here, and of course, you must know this one. You must know this one. That is Congo Man by the mighty Sparrow himself. All right, let's jump into our next interview. We are going to be chatting this morning with Marissa Gibson Bailey, who's a sport and exercise scientist and a certified exercise physiologist. We are continuing our conversation when it comes to the intersection between sport. Let me get this right here. The intersection between physical education and sport science. Good morning.
Hi. Good morning. Good morning, Carrie. Good morning, Roca.
Morning.
Morning, Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you for joining us again. And you have a guest this morning. How about you introduce your guest this morning again?
Right. It's Dr. Lisa Mohan Watts, a colleague of mine. We worked in the sports science field here, right here in Trinidad and Tobago with our national athletes, teams, as well as individuals. And she's here from a sports psychology perspective because we want to link sport physiology and sports psychology, and how does the two connect to physical education?
Yes, definitely. So let's jump right into it. My first question, ask you first, Marissa. What are your experiences interacting with and working with elite athletes?
Right. I would talk from the 2 points of working locally as well as being at the Olympic site in the USA. Two different cultures. And what I could say similarly is that the commitment as well as the support team around these athletes different in terms of the objective, their desire for excellence, and the amount of investment that goes into the preparing for high excellence, for support, for sport at the highest level. Right. You know, so one of the key things that stood out to me is that you can't be starstruck, especially in an environment where you're dealing with Olympic athletes. You cannot be starstruck. You have to treat them as they're human beings and do what you're supposed to do because they're expecting you as a professional to give of your best.
Right.
Because you would want them to be at their best when they go to their particular sport.
So no selfies when you're supposed to be doing evaluations, right?
No selfies, and you're not even supposed to say who you're working with.
Right.
That's if the athlete decides to come out in public and say, you know, I am working with Ms. Gibson Bailey, whatever. It is not about, I'm in the background, and remain in the background.
Right. And I guess that's all about being a professional. And what about you, Dr. Mohan Watts? What is your experience dealing with elite athletes, internationally, locally as well?
Yes, Carrie, good morning, and good morning to Trinidad and Tobago. I concur with Marissa on the points that she brought up this morning. The cultures are really, really different. In the US, there is that team. I mean, out there, you would have that focus on preparedness, and it seems as if the understanding with respect to what goes into preparation for elite performance is better. It appears that way. I'm not saying that it is, but it appears that way when you go out and you see the emphasis that is placed on that preparation prior to performance. Now, locally, there isn't as much, but the thrust is there to get athletes prepared, but there is still a lot of things that are lacking. And I think this conversation would serve to help to put in plugs in areas that need to be put in. So my experience, I'd like to talk about my experience locally. Now, athletes are also human beings, and they are preparing for elite level performance. And as Marissa rightfully said, our job is to help them to prepare, and we are in the background. So again, we treat them as human beings, and that is something that when they go out there and they get treated by the public as somebody who is widely recognized, we have to understand that they are human beings, and we have to help them so that they can go out there and do what they need to do and help them in the areas that they need help. From a psychology or sports psychology perspective, these athletes are looking for the competitive edge. And with looking for that competitive edge, because they are going out there and they're competing among the best. So they have to try to find whatever it is that would give them that edge so that they can come out on top. And with that, they experience so many different things. And if they are not able to handle those pressures, then they can exhibit symptoms that would inhibit their performance. So I've seen the most popular ones are sweaty palms, diarrhea, nausea, vomiting. Those are physiological symptoms,
Wow.
right? And those physiological symptoms have a psychological foundation.
Yep.
And so in that way, if the psychologist and the physiologist don't work together, then we won't be able to help those athletes. Because when you look at it from a physiological perspective, you would think that, hey, they're probably sick. But the psychologist would understand that those are anxiety symptoms.
Right.
And in so doing, now we can work together to help,
exactly.
to help
And
the
I just want to
athlete.
ask the final big question for the morning. We only have a few minutes left. Marissa, what do you think are the areas to focus on to promote holistic development from the grassroots level? So we went from the elites, we're speaking about grassroots now.
Competency, physical competency. I am a stickler for that. I think that when you have, give me a child, as they say, between 0 to 7 years, we do competency and I'll show you the athlete. You know, I think being physically literate, right, and knowing the basics of jumping, throwing, running properly, you're able to create that solid foundation so that child doesn't only go into one sport, they have the ability to branch off into so many different sports, right, because of the foundation that they have. And I think that is key for me. And quality coaching is key for grassroots.
Right, and with that, I want to say thank you very much for joining us this morning. And we will continue these conversations as we speak on the topic of From Playground to Podium. Joining me this morning, my two guests, Marissa Gibson-Bailey, sports and exercise scientist and certified exercise physiologist, as well as Dr. Lisa Mohan-Watts, who's a sport and exercise psychologist and a counseling psychologist as well. Thank you again for joining us. Have a great morning, and we'll chat again next week as we continue to disseminate all this information that is so pertinent right now.